Welcome to HomeFront Sitrep. I hope you're in for a great show today, because I'm just a veteran talking about what's on my mind and maybe yours.
You can find HomeFront Sitrep on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. You can also check out HomeFront Sitrep's YouTube channel.
Buckle up, the show is starting. Welcome, everybody, to a Sunday edition of HomeFront Sitrep. How is everybody doing? Gunny, how are you, sir?
Good, man. I don't know. For some reason, I'm tired as tired can be, but had a great day on the water yesterday, even with the wind. We landed 43 really nice crappie that will make somebody full for sure. But yeah, I mean, just great time. You know that's my therapy. So I got a nice little reset before I have to take off to Japan here in a couple days. In that 15 plus hour, plane ride from Chicago to Tokyo. But yeah, I mean, all good, man. But yeah, I had a great week, spent some time with the wife and the kids before I have to go. And I've learned over the years, being on the team, that I need to take time for me and I need to take time for the family, because, once the kids are out of the house, they're not going to come back and see mom and dad. Right. And then I want to spend as much time because they got their own lives. So, especially with my oldest wanting to go to a 3-letter agency, and who knows where he's going to be stationed. So, but yeah, I mean, it was a great week, and I couldn't ask for better weather other than we had a lot of rain, which is nice. I put a bunch of grass seed down, so hopefully that's taken. I've not looked at it, but yeah. How about you, Candace? You had a nice meeting last Monday, right?
Yeah, it was a great meeting Monday, and I missed everything last week, but because Sunday was Easter and I was at
And
mom.
your birthday.
Well, we're not talking about that.
Welcome to the 40 Club.
Hey, you're already cussing me.
I just said welcome to the fours on her post.
No, last weekend was wonderful, and I made a couple posts about it. About this is 40. That I'm really looking forward to it. But then, of course, as my life has been for the past 6 to 8 months, like everything kind of took a turn for the worse, and it's been a horrible week. But Tuesday, I lost my best friend of 18 and a half years. His little body was just too tired. I'm not going to talk about it because it's still rough. So it's just been a really, really hard week. And today, I finally had a day off, and so we went and ran some errands this morning, and I was like, you know what? I can't sit in this house because I still watch for them. But we went to the awesome flea market, which was not awesome at all because that thing is, whoa, it has changed. And I said, you know what? I want to go home and just take a nap. So that's what we did. We came home and I went to sleep on the couch, and I got up and I was like, let me go throw myself together for this podcast. And I was like, nope, I'll just throw on a Coast Guard sweatshirt because that's all I am right now. So,
Nice.
But I'm here and I'm happy to be here. It's just been a rough week, and I'm looking forward to sleeping it off tonight.
Yeah, it definitely had been a rough week for you. And my like we talked the other day, you know how I feel about it, the situation. And my kids still are like, holy cow, my wife was too. So yeah, we feel for you there. My week was a busy week last week. I was working overtime at my job, and then Saturday, I had to go into work on Saturday, and then right afterwards, we went to Grace's archery competition in Meade County. We were outside for 2.5 hours during her archery competition, which is her first ever. She's a senior in high school. Her first ever outside archery competition. And all the kids were like, dude, it's windy. How are we supposed to shoot? So they had to learn. And of course, Grace's score dropped from her normal 270 plus down to 233 on bullseye, which she hadn't shot 233 since like 6th grade, and so it's just one of those things. And then she got on 3D, and she actually had a better score on 3D than she did on the bullseye target. So it's
she learned from the bullseye, right? Because they did bullseye first, so she got to the little bit of wind adjustment, right, to get her arrow where it needed to go. And I'm sure everybody's score was reflected by the wind, especially if it was a crosswind for them or a tailwind, because they'll push the arrow down. But yeah, I mean it's crazy when you do nothing but indoor and then go to the outdoor. And you see what real life's truly about when you're shooting the arrows outside.
For many years we had a target outside, and I'm like, Grace, go outside and shoot. Go practice shooting. And she's like, no, Daddy, we don't shoot outside. And I'm like, babe, just go out there and learn. It will teach you to make you better shot. And she's like, no. She would argue. And my oldest, she's 18. She is the epitome of. You could tell her. She could be wearing a green shirt, and you could say, hey, your shirt's green. She would argue with you that it's not green. It's freaking olive drab or something like that. So she just likes to argue.
Who she got that from?
Her mama.
Mama better not be listening.
Oh, yeah, she better not be listening. Man, I tell you what, I'm super excited about tonight's guest because he's a colonel, retired. And he's got a heck of a story, just from
his whole life, right?
Yeah, his whole life, yes. And what he's doing now, it's amazing. So we got, I'm excited. So we got retired Colonel Scot Storey getting ready to come up here on the stage. I didn't get to do the meet and greet with the retired Colonel here. Gunny did. So do you want to talk about a little bit about the meet and greet real quick, Gunny?
Yeah, I mean, initially he's like, I don't think I'm going to be good for your podcast. I'm like, listen, that's not what it is. It's, us telling your life event, your story. He's a podcaster. He does a lot of volunteer work. He's taught JROTC, and he spent a lot of time in the SF community in the Army. So, we all, anybody that serves, whether it's the 4, 20, 40, whatever, we all have a story to tell. And we all have, hopefully something that's inspiring to help somebody out that might be on the struggle bus a little bit. So I can't wait for Scott to come on and talk about his life events and what he's gone through, what he's doing now, his podcast a little bit. And, of course, obviously he has a story to tell. It's his last name. So his entire life from the day he was born to now has been a story. So I can't wait. But without further ado, let's bring up Scott.
All right, let's bring him up. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Willis, I'm doing great. I'm really grateful to be here with you. I thank you for inviting me on, and I had a great chat with Gunny a little while ago, and I'm happy to be here because I love what you're doing. I think having veteran stories be told is good, and I'm just honored to be a part of it.
Well, we're honored you're here, and I'm sorry I did miss the meet and greet with you, but family came first that night, and just so honored that Lauren Burns said, hey, this guy would be amazing for your show. And after talking with Gunny was like, yeah, this guy would be a perfect fit for our show. So thank you for coming on and hanging out with us. If you don't mind, introduce yourself to the world of HomeFront Sitrep, the ones that are watching now and the ones that will be watching later or listening to us later, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I retired after 33 years, 7 months, and 29 days in the Army. And I love to say it that way because generally when I talk to people, they're like, oh my gosh, you counted. And I did not count. The Army counts and they tell you on your way out the door what that was. Of course, that includes some reserve time too. So I did about 8 years in the Army. I got out for a while with a youth pastor, and then I went back in and came in right as 9/11 happened. And I didn't ever feel like I could leave for a while. And I kept thinking I would just retire. And then every time I'd go to pull that trigger, I'd get promoted. So I just stayed for a while and I enjoyed what I was doing. And I started as an infantryman. So I was a platoon leader in the 7th Infantry Division, with my first duty assignment being Fort Ord, California. And I fought in Panama for just cause. So some folks have to think way back in their memory bank for that one. From there, I went to the Ranger Regiment, had a great time as a platoon leader in the Rangers for a while until I got fired. And that's a story in itself. We can peel that onion back if you want to. So from there, I ended up in the Ranger Training Brigade for a while and decided to go Special Forces. And I spent time as a detachment commander in the 3rd Group and a lot of time in Africa before I had that break in service. And I was doing youth ministry for a while, but I just felt that pull back to the Army. And then, as I said, 9/11 happened, and I returned as a Special Forces officer, but eventually was kind of pulled over to the civil affairs. And that's where I did the rest of my career. And I finished out as a colonel in civil affairs, and a lot of neat stuff I got to do there between time in DC, which wasn't that neat, but it was some time in DC, being at the battalion level, and then eventually commanding a brigade myself. That was pretty awesome, just to help soldiers, but also to see them doing that global mission. And then closing out my career in Carlisle Barracks with the Peacekeeping Stability Operations Institute, and just kind of being here. Doing life. And then about 2 years after retirement, so I retired back in 22, we decided to get closer to the kids. So we moved back to North Carolina, and here we are. And it was in that time frame that I started the podcast, and really have watched that evolve over the last year and a half or so, because I started it thinking that it was going to be a way to help teach people. But now it's kind of become just more my way to share a story, and I'm hoping to evolve it even a little bit more, or I'm helping to pull other voices in. I'm trying to figure out how to do that and hear other people's stories. But it's just been an exciting journey, and a lot of threads we could pull on and talk about on what I've learned along the way. I think, though, as I reflect on it, the truth is it never should have happened. It shouldn't have been possible, because I was born in the 60s with a hip dysplasia. And back then in the 60s, the treatment for a hip dysplasia was to wear the braces like Forrest Gump. If you remember the Forrest Gump braces, I wore those for really probably through the first, maybe the 2nd grade. And I remember just being horrible and awful, and I hated them. And I tried to wear overalls to hide them and all kinds of things. And eventually they came off, and I went on to live a pretty normal life. And I remember when I was graduating from the Special Forces qualification course and got my Green Beret, my parents had come up to Fort Bragg to see that. And my mom just kind of smiled, and she said, the doctor said you wouldn't do anything physical. You wouldn't run. You wouldn't play like other kids. And I just didn't think you needed to know that. So I didn't tell you. And I'm so grateful that my mom was smart enough to keep me in the dark. And I was able to go on and do a lot of the stuff that I did that absolutely uses my body and helped me learn a whole bunch of stuff. things like voluntary hardship and being comfortable being uncomfortable, and that you can do so much more than you think you can, especially if you don't know your limits. And I think that's why I did the whole podcast despite the limits, because most of them are in our head. We self-impose our limits, and I try to help people see that, yeah, some things are real. There are some definite limits. You know, if you leave an aircraft in flight without a parachute, you're probably not going to survive. That's a real limit. But a lot of the rest of it, we can overcome that. And that's what I try to do as I share with folks all the time. And then now I'm teaching junior ROTC at a high school here near Raleigh, North Carolina. And I love it because I'm helping young leaders grow and young kids learn that they can do so much more than they think they can.
So basically just full circle, basically.
I think that's probably a good way to say it. You know, I did about a year of trying to be an entrepreneur, and it just wasn't me because I wasn't interacting with people enough. And I had to go where I was making a difference. And I thought, you know what? I can make a difference in high school.
That's awesome. Yeah. So our school had a Marine Corps ROTC at one time. And then I guess the people who were running it got pulled in other directions. So there's no longer an ROTC in our school. I kind of wish there was, because I have my oldest daughter. She's planning on going into the military. She wants to be a 3-letter agency as well, kind of like Gunny's kid there. So she's going to go to college first, and then enlist in the military into the Air Force, and then go from there. So we'll see. But I wish there was an ROTC program there, just so she could have had that discipline and stuff as she was growing and maturing as a young adult. But you know, I think living with a Marine as her dad, I think it kind of gave her some structure, but she still likes to argue all the time. So we'll see how it all plays out. So
her dad, Lofty.
Yeah. So I want to peel back. You said you got fired.
Right.
I want to, if you're okay with sharing this story, I want to hear this story on how you got fired.
Yeah, absolutely. I've shared it before. I'll be tactful and not reveal the man who fired me's name, just because I don't think that's necessary to get the story. But I was a platoon leader in the 3rd Ranger Battalion, and my company commander got fired. And so the new commander came in and he did his initial counseling with us. And you know how those things go. You got a new boss coming in. He brings you in. He's going to give you his philosophy and what he thinks, and give you some left and right limits. So I didn't think anything of it. But when I got into his office for this one-on-one discussion, the very first words out of his mouth were, "You don't have what it takes to be a Ranger Rifle platoon leader." And I was like, "Okay, sir, can you tell me what it is I'm doing wrong so that I can improve?" And he's like, "It's just a feeling I have." And I was like, okay. And I didn't say anything at that point in time, although I did go home and I told my wife, yeah, I'm going to be fired in the next 90 days. He's clearly building book. And so I just kind of braced myself for that impact. 30 days later, he absolutely called me into his office for another developmental counseling rather than that initial counseling. And it was kind of the same thing. You don't have what it takes to be a Ranger Rifle platoon leader. I was like, well, sir, can you tell me a little bit more? Because I want to be here. I want to stay here. And I'm trying to improve. So if you could, but I don't know what it is you're seeing that I'm not doing. And he was like, it's just a feeling I have. And this time I pushed back. I'm like, well, I can't help your feeling. I need a little bit more. And he's like, you don't yell at your guys enough. It's just a feeling I have. And that's my perception, and perception's reality. And I was like, okay. And I'm kind of a quiet reformer anyway. I'm not a yeller by nature, though I did go through a yelling period. And so I remember I went home, I told my wife, like, okay, we're 30 days in, and another 60 days, I'm going to get fired. That's just the way this is going to work. And it was not 90 days to the day, but it was pretty close. He called. It was after we had it was during Christmas time, and we had a block leave. And I came back, and he called me into the office, and he said, hey, I'm just telling you before it comes out, you're getting moved over to the Ranger Training Brigade because they need somebody, and you just don't have what it takes to get here, to cut it here. And so it was right by the money on the timeline. I knew that was going to happen, and I went down there. And that's kind of a funny story because he spoke like it was a known fact. And so I left I left the compound and I stopped at Ranger Joe's on my way out to the Ranger Training Brigade, and I had a new patch sewn on my uniform and a new beret flash sewn on, and I walked into the training brigade, and apparently I was actually going in for a job interview, not a meet and greet. And so I walked in, and the brigade XO was like, "Wow, you've already sewn the patch on." And I said, "Well, sir, you know, when loyalty shift, they shift." And I guess they hired me, and there I was. I ended up down in the fourth battalion, and really that was actually in the long term a good move for us. You know, so that's kind of how the firing happened. As I unpack it 30 years later, or 30 plus years later, I know I had some culpability in it. Before my company commander got fired, I had fallen out of a group run, but I also had a brand new baby daughter, and I was running about 104-degree fever. And the smart thing to do would have been to go on sick call, but I thought if I went on sick call, I would get fired, and so I went on the run instead. And when we passed the 5-mile mark where we were supposed to stop and decided to do another 3 miles, I couldn't hang. And you know, so I think that's what he held against me. And so there's where I had culpability in it, but that's looking back on it now. You know, that's the only thing I could think, because as I assessed my leadership capabilities, I didn't see it. And I never failed a published Ranger standard, right? So I failed a non-standard run, but I think that's what did me in. You know, it is what it is.
So it sounds like he was not a great leader, because if he was a great leader, he would have gave you more than it's just a gut feeling I have. I mean, Gunny and I had our fair share of bad leaders when we were in the military, and he knows the one that comes to mind right off the get-go. He was our first company commander. He also was relieved of duty. I think he wound up picking up major before he got out. Yeah, because he wasn't going to go any further than major. But a good leader will actually tell you how you can improve. But it sounded like the commander who let you go didn't give you that option to work on things that you needed to work on. So, but then again, hindsight's 2020. You might not be where you are today if you had stayed where you were. So,
you know, I fully agree with that, Willis. And one of the things I'll tell you, though, is it impacted when I went on and became a brigade commander. It impacted the way I interacted with young officers and my soldiers. You know, I learned from the way he treated me. You know, I hesitate to say he wasn't a good leader, because he did go on to get 4 stars, you know.
Oh, dang,
and
okay.
I had a couple of chats with him throughout my career. I bumped into him more than once as I had progressed. And I just decided that, hey, a captain's 25, 26 years old. I think we've all made decisions in our 20s that maybe we would have done differently in our 30s, 40s, and, you know, like now in my 50s, near 60. I do things differently than I did in my 20s. And so I don't hold a grudge, although I would be a liar if I didn't tell you that there were years that it just bothered the fire out of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there's some stuff from, I've been out of the Marine Corps since 2004, and he was my platoon commander, or my company commander for the first 3 years of from 97 to 2000. And, I still hold grudges against him to this day, but not needless to say, he was doing what he thought was right at the time. And, he just, I don't know. So I get it.
And we went through a cycle too, right? Where when we first got to the fleet, all of our platoon sergeants were former drill instructors. So they were used to that, you know, willing obedience to orders and the barking and all that other stuff. Towards the end of our first 3 years, there was a switch, and a lot of our platoon sergeants became recruiters. And it was a complete 180, right? Because you have the recruiter that listens, right, and then talks back instead of yelling back. And after I came off recruiting duty, I was still a young sergeant, a couple of years, 3-year sergeant, and I had a lieutenant say, "You're not going to make it as a platoon sergeant because you're not yelling at the guys." I'm like, I don't have to yell at the guys. I get through to the guys more by talking to them than I do yelling at them, because that's all they've heard to this point is people yell at them. Drill instructors yell at them. Instructors yell at them. It's to the point it goes in one ear and out the other, right? But when you talk and get to the root cause of what their problem is, or what is going on within their head that day, you get a lot more accomplished and they perform better. So yeah, I went through that same thing, Scott, where it was like, you're not going to do it. And then a couple years later, I got promoted to gunny. Who knew? But I had a major too when I was on recruiting duty. You're not going to mount to anything. You're not going to mount to anything. So when I found out that I was got approved for the Navy Marine Corps medal and I was getting promoted to gunny on the same day, I reached out to him via email. I was like, hey, you want to come pin me to gunny? I was that guy.
Okay, so I almost did ask this guy to come promote me to colonel. I really did. I thought it would have been awesome. Or to have him adjudicate my retirement, because I think I will make him say something nice about me.
Right? Yeah.
But I knew that was inappropriate.
From the officer standpoint, I can see it, but I was an enlisted guy, right? And the gunnies don't care. The E7 doesn't care. The Sergeant First Class doesn't care. So I just let it out there.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Actually, the guy I had to do it was a fellow colonel who had just retired, and I had more respect for him and the way we worked together. Because I had kind of caught up to him. He was the boss, and so that's why I had to him do that, because it was a better family feel for that ceremony. But it's interesting you bring up the fact someone tells you you're not going to amount to anything, and how often I think about how we listen to other people and let them guide us and shape what we think. It's what I deal with kids all the time. Like, stop listening to that. Yeah. You don't have to be what people say. You can be who you are, and you can be so much more than what you think you're destined for. It's your self-talk that gets you. I see it so often now.
Yeah. Well, and it's a lot worse now, especially with the younger kids with social media, right? It's the cyberbullying. They don't want to do it to your face anymore because they don't want to get punched in the face. So they do it over the internet, right? And I came from a very small town, and I had peers, I had teachers telling me that I wasn't going to go anywhere. And it's like, man, do I go and do this to prove them wrong, or do I do it to prove me right?
Yeah.
And then it's, I realized that I didn't have to become a product of my environment. And once I realized that, there was no stopping me in what I wanted to do and when I wanted to do it. So I think that alone just pushed me to 12 years and as a gunny, and I retired at 14 years, 3 months, and 26 days, medically. Right. So yeah, we all know the days and months and all that, because it's right there on your DD 214, right?
Exactly. Oh my goodness. But a great point. The social media is really tearing apart. What boggles my mind is the kids absolutely know that's a problem, and yet they can't stop themselves from looking at it and dealing with it. They're really torn between the two. I have learned a lot in the last 3 or 4 months.
Yeah. So my daughters have dealt with a lot of cyberbullying, and it started early, like 4th, 5th grade. And these kids, they're getting cell phones and, getting TikTok. Well, back then it was Musically and getting all these social media platforms and posting all kinds of crazy stuff about each other. And my youngest daughter, back in 5th grade, had a plan. Let's just say she had a plan to not be here anymore. Luckily, she reached out to mom and dad and said, hey, this is what's going on. And, for the longest time, we were like, well, how do we fix this? And, we went to the school, we talked to the principals, we talked to the teachers, and there was only so much they could do, because a lot of it happened after school. And they're like, well, it's not happening on school grounds. I'm like, yeah, but if you've got a student that is at the point of thinking about doing something that they should not be thinking about as a 4th grader or 5th grader, something's got to change. And I'm glad to see that the laws are changing when it comes to like cyberbullying and stuff like that. But it's different from like when I was in high school, and Gunny could probably say the same thing, and you probably can too, because back then, if you had a problem with somebody, you waited till you got done with school that day and you went in a parking lot somewhere and you duked it out, and then you became best friends afterwards.
Or you did it in school and got suspended.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Man, when I went to school, the vice principal pulled all the boys out one day and he said, look, if you want to have a fight, come see me. and we'll put on gloves and headgear, and you guys can go at it for 3 1-minute rounds, and we'll see if you still want to fight. But if you fight outside of telling me beforehand, then you're, like you said Gunny, you'll be suspended.
Yeah.
And I did that at least 2 or 3 times, and I'm still in touch with the guys that I got into fights with over the whatever. I don't even know what we were fighting about, because that's what the 3 rounds with 16-ounce gloves does with you, right? You're like, why are we doing this? And
Yeah, we took gloves into Iraq with us.
Yeah, but you can't do that today. You know, it's not an acceptable way to help folks, I guess.
Yeah, I mean the soft parenting and the coddling and all that, and I witnessed it today. There was a younger kid just screaming at the top of his lungs, and I looked at the parents. I'm like, bust his ass, give him a reason to cry. He'll stop crying, just because he didn't get a Cheeto that he wanted, and he's losing his mind. I mean, come on. But again, it's that soft parenting, and don't pay attention to them and they'll stop. This kid didn't, all the way through the parking lot. I mean, we heard him as we were driving away. I'm like, oh. Yeah. And my kids are looking at me like, aren't you glad we didn't act like that? Because they knew they'd get a spanking. It's just the way it was. I grew up with spankings, and I think I turned out okay. Both of my kids turned out okay. I mean, my oldest is a freshman, if you will. He graduated high school last year, and he already has almost 3 years of college done. And he's been on the dean's list the past 3 semesters of college, even as a high school student. So my other one's on the struggle bus. We don't know what to do with him. He is, I mean, we got to sit him down and, oh yeah, he's me. He's me. He's definitely mini me.
Oh, I get that.
So between the Army JROTC, being an instructor there, being a speaker, being a podcast host, what else do you do? Because you do all kinds of stuff.
Oh, I like to get outside a lot. So I like to hike, and about every other year, my wife and I and her twin sister and husband will go do something, So we did 1 year, we whitewater rafted down the entire Grand Canyon with a tour. That was pretty awesome. Wow. Then 2 years ago, I think it was, we did 10 days on the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska. So climbed up the Exit Glacier and went up and down the mountains. And
nice.
Played there. And then this July, we're headed to Glacier National Park to go explore the glaciers up that way. And I think we're going to hit Denali next year. Although I keep telling them, look, Denali's a technical hike. We're one a little bit kind of up in our years. And I don't know that we have that in us. And they were very.
What about Gold Star Peak in Alaska?
I'm going to have.
It's a peak dedicated. It's a peak dedicated to the Gold Star families.
Well, see, now I've got a new trip on my forecast, because I would go just to do that, and check that out. I mean, I think one of my lifelong goals is I want to hike the AT from Georgia to Maine, and I want to do it in one shot. My wife has no interest in doing that, and so what I'm trying to talk her into doing is just kind of chase me up the trail, and then pull me off every 5 or 7 days, and stay in a hotel together and let me shower and all that, and then she can refit me and put me back in there. She's not bought into that plan yet. But I'm thinking I want to do it before I turn 70. That, or I got to wait until I'm 83, because I think the record age is 82 right now. But I'm not out to set a world record. I just want to do it.
Yeah. Do you want to start in Georgia, or do you want to start in Maine and work your way down?
I'll probably start in Georgia and work my way up, because the trail was originally designed to be hiked that way.
Yeah.
When I lived in Pennsylvania, we were in Carlisle. We were just right there by a good segment of the trail.
Yeah.
And I was on it quite a bit, and I'd hiked it both from southbound to north and vice versa. And the trail is really designed to hike from south to north. I mean, they've got all kinds of plans in it now, because there's so much congestion on it.
Yeah, well, and then there's so many things of, okay, if you plan on doing the whole thing, use this post office for this day, this post office for this day, and going from the spring in Georgia, and then up through the summer into Maine. I'm from Maine originally, so I've walked a lot of the trail up in Maine.
Yeah, and then the other thing too is I just think there's something magical. Of course, I've read all the hype, right? So there's something magical about finishing up there at Katahdin. Yeah, I would think it would be anticlimactic to start at Katahdin and then end up at Springer Mountain. Like, okay, but I mean, I guess there's a romance to it. Like I said, my wife has no desire to do this, but I look at the first guy that did it was an Army veteran, and he hiked the trail to hike the Army out of him. And that was my original plan. I was going to do it when I retired back in 22 when I entered the roles. I was going to start that summer, but instead I took a job. So I no kidding signed out on transition leave one day, and I was at work at a church the next, and then I just never could. And then now just kind of trying to figure out when do I do it, because I got grandkids and they're right here and I'm loving seeing them. And so now I'm thinking, well, do I wait till they're old enough to come along with me a little bit? But I don't know, but that's a goal, so I'm an avid hiker and I like to kayak and spend time outside. I would skydive if I could, but I got artificial knees. And so that's a permanent no for me. And I'm not allowed to downhill ski, but since I don't downhill ski, that hasn't been a problem.
Heck yeah. No, so the Appalachian Trail has always been one that's on my bucket list to do. I'm not a climber. Like, I don't go climb peaks or anything like that, but, hiking the Appalachian Trail or going out west, see the Grand Canyon. I'd love to go whitewater rafting in the Grand Canyon, and that's bucket list items. Of course, my kids one's 18 and one will be she'll graduate. So one graduates this year, one graduates next year. Then we'll be empty nesters. They'll be in college doing their own thing, and hopefully by then the wife and I can plan on doing some trips. But getting the wife outdoors, because she's allergic to everything outdoors, might be a little bit of a headache, but we'll see. We'll if not, me and Gunny will have to take a tour across the United States.
Don't throw me in there. I don't hike.
Oh, you could do it like Scott said. Like, you go do your thing for 5 to 7 days, meet up with her at a hotel, and then she'll send you on your way again.
Yeah.
I tell you, after 9+ years in the infantry, I don't hike. I don't run unless I have to.
Yeah.
No, I don't like the beach. The Marine Corps ruined me of the beach and hiking and running, and I just don't do it anymore. So,
Gunny, I'm with you on sand, man. I hate sand, but that came out of Iraq more than anything else. So I used to love the beach, and now, hey, can we go to the lake? Because this just got clay. I can live with that.
Yeah.
But hiking on your own, totally different experience, man.
Yeah.
It's different when someone tell you, hey, carry this 200 pounds of lightweight gear, because heck, it's still 200 pounds. And then being able to pick what you absolutely want rather than what's on your packing list.
Right.
And you're able to kind of plan that out. And then you can set your own schedule. If you were planning to do 11 miles that day and you get to 6 and say, hey, this is a nice place to camp, I'm just going to stop here. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then I did a little time, like my son and I hit, we were trying to through hike the Art Lobe Trail here in North Carolina. And of course, we didn't calculate the fact that we were doing it in November. We'd really crossed into winter for the most part. So we didn't account for the daylight, nor did we look close enough at the map, critical error, right, to see that, this is an extremely difficult trail, and neither one of us is really in enough shape to do this. And so we pulled off about mile 19. And I had to call an SF buddy of mine and say, hey, man, can you pick us up here at this intersection? He's like, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow morning. And but we decided that, hey, our main goal was to be out together in the woods and enjoy nature a little bit and just kind of catch up. And so mission accomplished. Yeah, we didn't complete the trail, but we spent time together, just him and I, before he had to go back to work. And I had to figure out life because I just gotten out of the Army and quit my job in Pennsylvania, and we're living in an RV in North Carolina.
Yeah. It's crazy how nature grounds people, right? And brings everybody back together. And there's even a technique called grounding where you take off your shoes and just walk in the grass to become one with the earth and get that sensation of, everything on your feet. So, I'll walk outside barefooted all the time, and they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, man, I got to get my summer feet. I got to get the calluses built up because, we're going to go to the beach and we're going to go do this. And I don't want to have, soft pedicured feet and be like, ow, 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 so you got to build up those calluses. You got to build up your summer feet to be able to, handle some of the heat.
So
like that, Candace.
Pedicured feet.
Absolutely. I just don't paint my nails.
Gunny goes and sits in there with a bucket that's got a little fish in there. That's what he does.
I'm gonna try it.
It wouldn't surprise me.
I got very ticklish feet. That's the only part of my body that's ticklish, but I don't think I'd be able to make it through the fish. Not at all.
Good for you. I'll never touch your feet.
If I go and do it, I'll video it so you can see.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, yeah, I want to see a video of you doing
But
that.
that might be like that. You might need to start an OnlyFans for that.
Oh my gosh.
The
Man,
only
that thought
thing-
of someone else touching my feet drives me crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
dude, I always have shoes on, and when I'm sitting on the couch and I have just socks on, and my wife comes in there and she touches my feet, oh God, no, I hate it.
Willa, yeah, me and Willis almost ended up rolling on the ground one night because I was grabbing his feet. That was funny.
Oh, bro, you about got beat up at night.
He's a freak about his feet. So when you know something like that, it's bad. Don't let your friends know.
Yeah, Scott, how many kids you have in your JROTC class?
So our whole program's got roughly 125 or so.
Wow.
In my classes, I've got upperclassmen and I have some smaller classes. So I've got one that's about 10, one that's 15, and one that's only 2.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, that's a challenge, having 2 kids for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Keep them engaged. That's a challenge.
Yeah. When I was on recruiting duty.
We're on a semester cycle, and so kids are in the program but aren't necessarily active in class.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was on recruiting duty, one of my schools had a Marine JROTC, and every now and again they'd be like, "Hey, can you come in and teach?" And it just so happens they were doing cold weather operations one time. I'm like, "Oh, I absolutely can teach that class," because Willis and I had to do it twice out in Bridgeport. But yeah, I mean, it was just fun interacting with the kids, and then of course, being the recruiter and having the poolies and those that are getting ready to go, and some that weren't in the best of shape, right? But they'd come out and they'd compete against some of these JRTC teams. And they're like, how is this guy doing that? He's not the greatest person. He's not the best in shape. And I had to tell everybody, you don't have to have a 6-pack.
Yeah.
You don't have to have big muscles. You can just be the average person and come out there and run the initial strength test, to run the PFT, to do everything. You don't have to be perfect at everything. Just do as much as you can. And, that opened the eyes of a lot of kids and made them want to push even more to do what, they could do instead of what I wanted them to do.
Yeah, it's one of the things I see with them is they don't realize how far their body will really go. I tell them all the time, like, hey, when you are wore out and you think you got nothing left, you've hit about 40%.
Yeah.
You got another 60% in you. Just tell yourself to do it. Tell your mind to shut up, calm it down, and go. But we just had a competition this weekend, a Raider competition, and the kids were doing a 5K, and they came around the corner as a team, and one was falling back bad, and they were kind of dragging them. I just hollered that at Adam. They all picked it up and they perked up. And I remember throughout the day, they're talking, oh, we're going to lose. We're going to lose. We're going to lose. Everyone passed us. We weren't doing well. And, they took first place in that 5K team race. They just didn't know it because it was a staggered start.
Yeah.
And then they ultimately took first place in the whole gig. So I was pretty proud of them, but I was more excited to see their response to it because they didn't think they'd placed at all.
Right.
It was really, really neat to see them overcome.
Yeah, that's the cool aspect about having that staggered start, because you're not all running at the same time. You're running your own time.
Yep.
And, we do an event here in Kentucky. Matter of fact, I just became the director this year, but we do the memorial fitness event to honor the guys that were killed at the Battle of Mogadishu. And you obviously, being in the SF community, Gary Gordon, or heard of.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up 15 minutes from where Gary was from. So when that happened in '93, I remember the procession that brought him home. I didn't want to be in the Army, so I didn't have the to do that. I wanted to be a Marine from a very, very young age. But every time I go home, he's got a statue in Lincoln, Maine. His markers across the street, and I visit every time. But yeah, we have a bunch of JROTC units that come out. We have ROTC units. We've got Third Bat that comes in. We've got a couple teams from the Night Stalkers coming in. Mike Durant and Jim Yacone came in last year and ran the event. So just to watch the kids compete against the Rangers or compete against the ROTC units from UK or some of the other colleges, and they're like, oh, we're going to beat them. We're going to beat them, and they'll put together a team of studs. But not realizing that, these Rangers have been doing that the entire time, right?
All they do.
But it's fun, man. It's fun to watch, and it's a staggered start. Same thing. and just to watch the excitement when we announce who won or who got third. And we give away plaques and stuff to them, and they get to take them back to their unit and hang them, in their, ROTC room. And yeah, it's awesome having those kids out.
Yeah. So you see this comment here?
Yeah. Troy said that, first out of state team for Mogadishu, Kentucky.
So what I think it's an invitation for your teams there in North Carolina if you want to come up October 4th to run the Moog Mile here in Kentucky, up in Georgetown.
Yeah, we'll have to talk and get a little more detail, and I'll see
for sure,
because I'm intrigued.
Oh, it's a great event. So we broadcasted live from there, not last year, but the year
2 years ago.
And we're going to be back again this year on October 4th. They're broadcasting live from up in Georgetown. And we're going to talk to, the different teams that are running through the course and stuff. And I think it's going to be a fun time again, like it was 2 years ago. So I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, and we're the only team Mogadishu Mile. Every other Mogadishu Mile that's out there is an individual effort. The previous director and myself, when we were designing this and sitting down, nobody goes into battle alone. And the smallest team is a 4-man team. So that's that, or 4-person team, I should say. So that's what we designed it. It's a 4-person team. There's 5 body exercises with push-ups, ball slams, tire flip, box jump, and burpees. And then they go into their one mile run with a rucksack. But yeah, it's just a great event, and we've watched it grow the past 4 years. So yeah, we're excited for it this year. We're changing locations for safety concerns and logistics. So yeah, and we got a great group of volunteers. So
yeah, it's a great cause too.
Yeah,
just a lot of folks. The further it gets in the past, if we don't keep it alive, people won't remember it.
Yeah, and my boss doesn't let us forget, Just Cause. He was part of that. He was I don't know if he was a Ranger at that time or an SF guy at that time, but he was a Ranger and then became an SF medic, and he was there. And then one of the founders of the other founders of the team was there as well as a Ranger. And every year we do a ceremony for one of the guys that he served with that was right from here in Cincinnati. And but yeah, he doesn't let us forget either.
That's good. Yeah, we're coming up on 35 years for Panama.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we talk about it all the time with our fallen brothers and sisters. As long as we keep saying their names, then their memory will never be lost. And I think a lot of people out there stop saying people's names. And to me, that shouldn't happen. We should always remember our fallen brothers and sisters, no matter how long ago it happened. We should always remember the ones who paid the ultimate sacrifice so we can have the freedoms that we have today. So that's the way I look at it.
No, you spot on. I lost 5 guys in Panama post Just Cause and the follow-on Promote Liberty. And my company commander was killed too, along with a bunch of crewmen. And I remember it just stuck in my craw when the article published in the paper was that it was a training exercise. And I'm like, man, we were still looking for PDF, and I won't call it the retraction, but the correction 6 weeks later was just a little tiny blurb buried on the back page. Well, actually it was an active mission and all of that. But I carried their names in my wallet for years until I don't have to carry them because I know them.
Yeah. Yeah, you never forget the people that you lost. I mean, they're always going to be etched in your brain. It never goes away. Never goes away. And that's even
good, bad, or indifferent, right? Because there's some people that you don't have so many great memories of, but you still know who they are. You still know who they were, and you can still talk about them, and and again say their name. That way they don't die that second time.
Yeah. Yeah. Miss Candace, you've been awful quiet. You got any questions for Mr. Scott?
Listen, I was really curious about your ministry because, you said you were a youth pastor and you went into that, and then you went to the Rangers, and I don't know, is that something you've brought into other parts of your life or now environment?
Yeah, so I think I've really done ministry my whole life. So I was actually in a Rangers before I became a youth pastor. I got out of the Army from my detachment time as a commander in the early '96, my first time, and I was a youth pastor for 3 years, but I stayed on in the reserve status, so I kept getting called up, and then I got called up for a real long stint when Special Operations Command South moved from Panama to Puerto Rico, and so I resigned my position because I felt like the kids couldn't go 6 to 8 months without a pastor. Like the church couldn't fire me, but I didn't feel right asking them to keep the job vacant that long.
Yeah.
And so I resigned so they could hire someone to take care of the kids. And I came back to another church for 2 years as an associate pastor, but I just felt that draw back to the Army, and I couldn't figure it out, and I didn't understand why the Lord would kind of do that to me, because I am a man of faith. But I really felt Him doing that, and right after I signed into active duty, I signed in on March 5th of 2001, and then by September it became abundantly clear why He had pulled me back in, because I wasn't a chaplain. I don't have an MDiv, so I was just I was a Christian soldier, so to speak, in the Corps, and I had a lot of freedom to do stuff and to minister to people that chaplains don't have, because I wasn't a chaplain. All that time I volunteered at a local church as a doing youth ministry. I've worked with teens in youth ministry my entire adult life, up until I retired from the Army initially, and then I actually became a campus pastor for 2 years at a satellite campus of my church. But before then, I was working with the teenagers in the parent church.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to the satellite. I was working mostly with young people. So I've always had a heart for young people, to try to help them know what's what in life and to work with them. So I think it's just always been kind of ingrained in everything I do. I mean, even now as I teach school, I can't evangelize or proselytize, but I can live a good life in front of folks and share, especially when they ask.
Yeah. Be a role model that way by living the life. Yeah, I'm right there with
morals for sure.
So I got a question. This is going to put you on a little bit of a hot seat here.
Oh.
All right. So over the course of your time in the military, name your favorite place that you ever deployed to. And then secondly, name the worst place you ever deployed to.
Okay. When you say deployed, are you wanting to tie it to a named operation, or can I count like JSET type deployments?
It could be any type of deployment. It could be a training deployment. It could be like a Liberty deployment that you might have went on or whatever.
Okay. So I think the best place I ever deployed to was my first deployment to the Republic of Congo when I had an ODA, when I was a detachment commander. I was, no kidding, the highest ranking American military member in the country. So that was pretty cool.
Wow.
The Marine Corps security detachment had an E6 commander, and they loved to call me skipper because I was an Army captain, but I was the highest ranking military member in the country, which isn't why I loved it. I loved it because I was far away from the flagpole. The embassy didn't mess with me, and my 11 other guys were able to train Congolese soldiers and to just be with them. And in fact, I remember getting ready for that deployment and getting ready to go on it. I had just gotten to the detachment about 6 weeks beforehand, and so I was getting ready to go. I inherited the plan from the chief that was my second in command, and I was executing his plan. And I went into my company commander. I'm like, "Hey, sir, do you have any last minute guidance for me before I leave?" And he said, "Don't screw it up." Although he didn't say don't screw it up. He was a little more explicit.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, thank you. That was helpful. But anyway, I get into Congo, and we got there, and back then we were having a sat radio was like a big deal in the 90s. You didn't really have it. And we just happened to have them for this mission. It wasn't a normal set for us. In the past, we had communicated using AM radio skips and Morse code, which I know I'm really revealing my age when I tell you that. But but I had that sat radio, so I called him to send my initial report. And so I kind of, hey, we're here, we're good to go, we're talking. Here's my report, everybody's here. And I laid out my report and I said, do you have anything further for me? And he said, no, you called me, it's your dime. I sent you with guns and money. Don't call me again unless you need a lawyer. And then I didn't hear from him for 3 months. I didn't talk to him again until I set foot back on Fort Bragg. That was awesome. I was just kind of out doing my thing with my guys. We were executing the plan and maintaining the relationships. And then just the countryside, I learned a whole lot about Africa being there and seeing things that were there and being with my guys, but also with the local indige. I will probably my favorite part about being an SF was training other nation soldiers. It was just really, really cool. The worst place I've ever deployed to was probably my last deployment, supporting the CJTF Inherent Resolve. We were technically deployed to Iraq, but really spent the bulk of my time in Kuwait, and I hated being in Kuwait because you were deployed, but you weren't deployed. You were. A lot of the staff was working regular hours, but if you were a senior, you're working long hours, and yet there were people who were in Kuwait permanent party, and they kind of had one set of rules. And if you're deployed, you had another set of rules, and but there was a Chili's in town. I'm not in town, right there on the base, and it didn't feel right. I can't explain any other way than that. And it was stressful. I actually had a heart attack while I was there.
Oh man,
that was kind of exciting, although I didn't know I had it, so that was even more exciting. But I had it, didn't know what was going on. Went home, went to my chew, and went to bed. Got up the next day and went to work. I did call my wife to tell her, hey, I think something went down, but I don't know what it was, and she was very upset.
Sitting in a talk and not being operational is the worst.
It's horrible. It's horrible. And then you work with the allies, and some are good and some are not so good. And I'm a civil affairs officer. That's what I was doing at the time, right? And so I've got above me a general officer who is from another country, but he's a pilot. And he's a fast pilot. He flew jets, and he's like, he sees the world from 30,000 feet moving really fast. And I'm like, man, when you talk to locals, especially when you're talking to local government entities, they don't move fast. They're not going to make that change tomorrow. Nope. We'll be lucky if we just get them to agree to meet us again tomorrow. And just trying to get them to understand that was really, it was challenging.
Yeah.
But that, so I think it's probably worse because of what I did, not where I was. I don't know that I've ever been any place that I didn't like because I learned something and got to meet new people and see new stuff, man. Because I hit every AOR there is. The only place I think I haven't been is Antarctica and Australia.
Man. Yeah, working with the foreign militaries, it opened your eyes up to a lot of things. And, Willis and I went and worked with the Greeks in 2000. And when they do a squad rush, like everybody at once, all, 15, 16 guys get up and go. And we're like, oh, we got to teach these guys something different. This is not going to work if they end up having to go into that type of battle again.
Yeah.
But, experiencing their food, experiencing their cultures, experiencing, learning their techniques and tactics and vice versa. Right. And that's probably the best time I had, whether we were in a, tsunami or a typhoon in friggin' Korea, and everybody, 16 people in the town are dying, and we're out in the field on the side of a rice paddy, and that just those experiences and working with, the Rock Marines and doing their ropes course, and man, those dudes like little spider monkeys climbing up the rock face. Yeah. Oh my Lord, here I am, 6 to 8 inches taller than them, and on the struggle bus trying to get up the rope, and they just up they go, but watching them and their techniques, and they're still rocking AKs, and they can put the magazine on the deck, and the weapon still fires, and then the way they go to try to do that with an M16, it's jam because you can't do it. But just learning that, and then we played soccer with them, we played softball with them, and just those experiences, I don't ever want to forget, for sure.
Yeah, for me, like, what I remember with the Greeks were, every meal they served alcohol with. here we are. We were told no alcohol, and the Greeks, they every meal they had 2 beers with pretty much every meal, and then at nighttime they got to drink whatever they wanted, and that was super cool to see that culture. And then for like me, one of the worst places that I ever went was Haiti. That was probably the worst deployment ever. And the reason being is because of for one, the stuff that we saw there. And then, that we would be at the front gate on post and they would be shooting over our heads. And it's just like, can we fire back? But yet then in front of them were women and children, and the men were in the back, using the women and children as shields. And, it was great to see the culture to a certain point. But when we were told we couldn't interfere with some of the stuff that if it was happening here in America, we would definitely interfere with and stop. But
we couldn't interject if it was Haitian on Haitian violence, no matter what was happening, unless it was directly aimed toward us or rounds were impacting around us. We couldn't do anything, for preservation of life and secure gear, right, is what the ROEs were. But yeah, some of the stuff that we witnessed down there, nobody should ever have to witness ever.
Right.
So you're there like in the 94 time frame?
99.
Okay.
Yeah, I was there. Willis and I were both there in 99. And then I went back in 04 after I came off recruit duty.
Okay. Yeah, I went in 2010 after the earthquake, and so a lot of that had settled down.
Because we, in 04, we got Aristide out of power and moved him to either South America or Mexico, and they established a better government, if you will. But then after the earthquakes, Aristide made his way back into country.
When the earthquake collapsed the government building at 5 p.m., pretty much anyone who was a hard worker was in there, and that changed a lot of the dynamic. That's probably a harsh thing for me to say. It changed the dynamic of the government.
For sure.
It's been hard to watch that over the last 15 years.
Yeah. I got called back for that, and I'm like, I'm not going. And they're like, Gunny, you're going. I'm like, I am at SecDef's TBI study in San Antonio. I'm not going. They're like, okay, we're going to send somebody else from your command. And we had a Haitian speaker in my command. I'm like, why wouldn't you send him to begin with? He's a Haitian national, speaks and writes and understands the language, but you want to send me because I've been there twice? Come on now. Be smarter.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Scot Storey, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to touch on before we end the show?
Gosh, man, I could talk to you guys for hours because it's just I'm having a great time. I think probably just the biggest thing that I would want to share with folks and is just keep pushing forward. You know what I'm saying? There's so much in our life that challenges us and makes it hard to overcome. And I don't like to talk about myself, by the way. I get really uncomfortable with it. And I was grateful that you called me Scott, because I know I wear a uniform to work, but at the end of the day, I retired from the Army 3 years ago, going on 4. And I don't understand why some folks have to keep hanging that rank on me. You know what I mean?
It's one of the most respected ranks in all the military. I've been retired almost 14 years. So I've been retired almost as long as I was in. And Willis never served with me when I was a gunny, and I still hear it. I hear it from my teammates. I hear it from guys that knew me. And just because, again, gunnery sergeant is one of those respected ranks throughout the military, right? So it's not the fact that we're putting it back on you. It's just the fact that it's highly respected. And I hope you don't take any offense to that.
No, I'm not offended at all. It's really interesting because when I go back home, like if I go to see my parents or my in-laws, to them I'm just Scott, and they don't see the things that you see. They don't understand that background, but I'm always encouraged too to just spend time with other folks. And so I'm happy to unpack anything you want me to unpack. It's been a great experience. And I love what you guys are doing. It's a space that is not filled enough where the average person, the average veteran can just kind of tell their story. and how that they're making a difference or where they're struggling. So I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Well, we definitely thank you for coming on here and hanging out with us. And we probably could go on for hours, but unfortunately, Reese Across America Radio says, "Hey, keep it to about an hour 15 minutes." So we got to shorten it down a little bit because when we first started, we were doing 2 hour, 3 hour podcasts when we first started, and then Reese Across America Radio recently, when we joined, they're like, "Hey, you need to trim that down to about an hour 15 minutes." I'm like, that's gonna be hard to do on some of these episodes, but
Yeah.
like I said, we could talk to you for hours, and it is a respect thing. I'm a Marine, and so you got to respect the rank most of the time. But I felt like it was not calling you Colonel and calling you Scott instead was like okay, because I think that's what you wanted to be called by. So.
Well, it says Scot Storey, not Colonel Storey.
I know.
That's why I went with Scott.
Yeah, same here. We've had some that had Colonel on there, and it's like, sir, you got to say. So, yeah, definitely. Yeah. But, no, we thank you for coming on here, and I thank Miss Lauren Burns for introducing us. And I'm going to pass you along to a couple other veteran podcasters that we're friends with. Misfit Nation, he was in here earlier, Rich LaMonica. I've already talked to him before you even came on the show, said, hey, I got this colonel that's getting ready to come on, and I think he'll be a great fit for your show. So I'm going to pass you to him, Triple Threat Vets Podcast, and a few others. Just be on the lookout for some emails connecting you guys. That way we can get you on some other podcasts to tell a different side of your story that might come out a little differently. So
is there anything that we can do to help you with your podcast?
I think just let folks, point folks to it. It's Despite the Limits. You can find it where any podcasts are and let that folks listen to it. And then, hey, my big desire is for folks to engage with me, so I can learn from them as much as I'm hoping they're learning from me, and help me shape that message. Am I helping folks grow and learn, and or they want to hear something different? Do they want to hear more of my personal story after all? Yeah. Because I think I've learned a lot over the years, but I also think I'm just a regular everyday ordinary guy. And if I can do it, I think pretty much anybody can do it.
So do you do a live podcast, or do you do a recorded podcast?
Yeah, I record it. I generally record it though in one shot. So I sit down and I just do it, and I don't do a whole lot of editing. And so you'll hear the dogs rattling their tags in the background and whining every now and then. But what I try to do, I first started out kind of telling a little story, a backstory, something that had happened to me, and then provide a leadership lesson from it. But now I'm kind of more just talking about life in general and what I'm learning as I move along.
When does that air? When do you put it out?
So I've been releasing it on the 2nd and 4th Friday of every month. But I literally decided when I released this Fridays to take it down to once a month. And so I'll probably start putting it on the 3rd Friday once a month.
Okay.
So the link is in chat, guys. If you're out there, it's podcast.apple.com/us/podcasts/ despite-the-limits, and then ID 17262701118. Or you just go to Google and type in Despite the Limits. And
that was good, Marine.
Find it that way. So, Scott, we're going to drop you in the green room if you want to hang out for just a few minutes there, and then we're going to wrap up the show. And
Thanks,
then
Scott.
we can chat afterwards.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Guys, how cool was that?
I could have sat there for hours just listening. Like I know I was quiet tonight, but it's the story. Like, it's interesting, and I'm sure there is. I mean, you got 33 years, 7 months, and 29 days worth of story there that you could just listen to.
Well, just his SF time, right? The things that he still can't talk about,
right?
That would love to hear, or even just the stuff that he can talk about, just because of, they operate in such a tight group. Yeah, right. He said he had 12 guys, him and 11 guys down in the Congo. And that's it. That's it. But him overcoming adversities that he didn't even know he had, right, to go to the Rangers, to go to the SF community, and have truly a storied career even though he ended with, like the public affairs or, civil affairs, still doing a lot of great things within, the Army realm. And now he's teaching kids, right? That's the future, amazing. The future of our military. I'm not just gonna say the Army, because some of those kids will go to the other branches, but, teaching the future of our military. And it's phenomenal.
Yeah. It's nice to know you have somebody like him in there doing that. All right, guys, and you're simply phenomenal.
Yes, simply amazing, Candace. Simply amazing.
I want to go back to a comment here. So the previous, there it goes. Go. I clicked it twice. He said Gunny might not hike, but he can slay some crappie, because we can't say that K word on here. We landed 43 crappie yesterday in a couple hours. So we had a great time on the lake.
See, I think Frank and Scott would have a great conversation together.
Oh yeah.
Conversations I've had with Frank, like I think those two would have a great time, and maybe Scott would write a book.
See, I think Scott should write a book. Honestly, I don't know if he's thought about it, but
Steve Kinsley says, "Help, guys and gal, you too, Sam." So I'm thinking he's saying, "Hello, guys and gal, you too, Sam."
Yeah.
So I appreciate it, Steve. Appreciate the love.
We appreciate you, Steve, very much, sir. But no,
him and Frank would have a great conversation together.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm thinking about writing a book as well. Mine and Gunny's story. How
I'm not writing nothing.
No, are you writing it in crayon? Is it a kid's book?
No.
Yeah. So we're gonna write it in crayon. So the Army and the Air Force and the Navy and the Space Force and the Coast Guard can read it.
Yes.
We might have to replenish, because we do like snacks. Because I am here for the snacks. But the only reason that we have crayons is so everybody else can read what we're writing.
Oh heck yeah!
Be a scratch and sniff for the Marines.
Yeah, my nose doesn't work too well, so I'll be all right.
Mine neither.
You can lick it.
Look, my wife's.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, baby.
She comes in.
Crayons, really?
Oh shoot!
Oh, hell.
We are off the friggin' chain. And what else is going to be off the chain is coming up here in the next 2 months when we go just a free for all, right? And it's going to be exciting just to have the three of us cutting up and doing whatever we want to do. And weirdos, absolutely. That's fun.
You wear that badge with pride, Julie.
Oh yes, we do. We wear it with pride. Anyway, Gunny, let's wrap it up, sir. This is you.
Yeah, you're not alone. You still have worth. You still have value. Don't let the dark days win. Surround yourself with people that are going to build you up and not tear you down.
I love it. And hashtag be someone's stranger. And what I mean by this is we're, as humans, we're more apt to talk to a complete stranger than the ones we love the most. So go be somebody's stranger today. If you see somebody's having a bad day, go up to them, say, "Hey, how you doing?" And if they give you the general red flags, "I'm okay, I'm hanging in there, I'm living the dream," then ask the next hard question. "Hey, how are you really doing?" And be ready for that conversation. Could be a 5-minute conversation, could be an 8-hour conversation. You have to be ready for that conversation. And Miss Candace?
All because it takes a village. Be somebody's stranger, and you're not alone. Some people are going to come into your life and you don't know why. And that village that you create is going to be the people that you least expected it. But it's that key. You're not alone. And it takes a village live in this crazy world.
I love it. And then, so I want to give a big shout out to our partners, Heroes Media Group, Reach Across America Radio, Veterans Voice Radio, and Military United podcast streams. You can find HomeFront Sitrep on reachacrossamerica.org/radio at 11 p.m. Eastern on Thursday nights. So go check out reachacrossamerica.org/radio and make sure you follow HomeFront Sitrep on there as well. Also, go check out sameflagsameoath.com. They small veteran-owned company in Texas. Matt and Becky are amazing. Top-notch quality on T-shirts and hats. And while you're at it, go check out HomeFrontSitrep.com. We do have hats on there. We do have shirts on there. Plus all the nonprofits, veteran business owners. It's a whole Rolodex of different veteran service organizations and veterans in general. So go check out HomeFront Sitrep. Tomorrow on HomeFront Sitrep, we have Shay Sparks. She is a badass. I'm just going to say that she's got her own podcast called the Shay Sparks Show. And then she's also has all kinds of other things that she's got going on as well. So go check out Miss Shay Sparks tomorrow. But it is that time of night, my friends, unfortunately. Like we always say on HomeFront Sitrep, stay safe out there. We got your six. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this show.
Suggestions and comments are always welcome.
Cannot wait to have another great show with y'all.
Don't forget you can find HomeFront Sitrep on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Stay safe out there. I got your six.